Good morning. This is Tisha Joe Morome Bakes. Today we are going to be running baking. Jambo and welcome again to the YouTube channel Joe Morome Bakes. A lot of you have given me feedback that you've been enjoying the back to basic teaching, explaining a bit of the show, if I can call it that. And today is a different one. We are going to be running about basic baking equipment that you as a baker, beginner, intermediate, advanced level, that you need. I'm going to be your teacher. I'm going to guide you on this. Welcome to the sun. Let's get baking. Guys, karibuni. Let's talk about basic baking ingredients that you as a baker at any level, beginner, hobby, intermediate, advanced, need. The first thing that you need, and it's pretty obvious, it's not obvious, but a friend of mine was actually joking and telling me, see, I just need an oven and flour and I'm good to go. Okay, flour. We're going to talk about flour or flour. Depends on your English teacher. When we talk about flour in baking, basically we're talking about wheat flour. Why wheat flour? Wheat flour has a protein called gluten. This is what gives it its stretchability. For example, when we talk about raising agents, we need the flour to be able to have stretchability and flexibility to be able to hold the air bubbles, because what raising agents do, they introduce air or carbon dioxide into the bake. So let's talk flour. The most common type of flour you will talk about, you will find, encounter, and it's available. If you live in Kenya like I do, you'll have it everywhere. All the shops have it. You don't have to go to the supermarket to get this all-purpose flour. All-purpose flour is flour that you can use to make flatbreads, chapatis. You can use it to bake cakes. You can use it to make mandazis. You can use it to make bread. It's all-purpose, literally. It means that. All-purpose flour. As a beginner, in fact, it's always good. It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner. I like to have all-purpose flour in large quantities at all times in my pantry, in my kitchen. With the addition of a raising agent, then it can be transformed into any baked good. The second type of flour I'm going to talk about is wholemeal flour. Wholemeal flour is basically flour that has been browned without the bran. The outer shell of the wheat grain being removed. This is healthier. It has a higher fiber content, but the downside is that it's a bit heavier. So it might need a lot more maybe raising agent, and maybe it's a thirsty flour as well. It uses quite a bit of, you need liquid, lots more liquid to bake with this. Keep that in mind. The other kind of flour that I'll talk about is self-raising flour. Self-raising flour is just flour that has baking powder and salt added. Sometimes just baking powder. It's got a raising agent added. It's a good thing to have, especially for quick breads, or if you need. You'll notice some of the recipes I gave, especially the one for the Victoria sandwich, because I mean, pressed for time, self-raising flour is your go-to flour, because I mean, you don't have to add raising agent to it. Now, the kind of flour I'm going to talk about is bread flour. Now, this is becoming available in Kenyan markets. It's bread with a high gluten content. Remember, we spoke about gluten being the protein in wheat flour, wheat and other grains flour, that makes wheat sort of gives it a flexibility and a stretchability that allows it to hold air and to rise, and also to so that when you need your flour, sometimes it's easier to work with. Like you can shape it into nice shapes, stretchability and flexibility, and the ability to stretch. Gluten. Bread flour has a high gluten content. The other flour I'll talk about is that they are gluten-free flours that are available on the market. I mean, there's lots of people now going gluten-free, and there's no reason why they shouldn't enjoy cake. There are gluten-free flour blends that are on the market. Some of them are made from seeds, nuts, and some root vegetables or tubers like arrowroots or cassava, and that's a gluten-free flour that is used for baking. Here in Kenya, for example, we also have sorghum, amaranth. That's a range of that's in the range of gluten-free flours. Enough on flour. Now let's talk about raising agents. Raising agents is what enables our baked goods to rise, basically increase in volume and size. For example, if I baked a cake, when I start with a cake, I'll fill the pan up to halfway, but by the time the cake is done baking, till I'll, sort of fill the pan. Raising agents, I'm going to categorize them into two categories: chemical raising agents and biological raising agents. Under chemical, we have baking powder. I've talked about it before. I said baking powder is a chemical raising agent that produces carbon dioxide in the baked good once it's subjected to heat and moisture, and therefore that's the rising action, produces carbon dioxide. The second chemical baking agent, the rising agent or leavening agent that I'm going to talk about is baking soda. Baking soda is slightly different from baking powder in that baking powder is alkaline. There's something alkaline added to it, and it responds the same way as baking powder by producing carbon dioxide. But how does baking soda work to raise baked goods? Remember, we talked about it having alkaline. It rises. It causes the rising action if it's subjected to liquid, and liquid baking ingredients of an acidic nature. What do I mean? For example, lemon juice. For example, maziwa mala or fermented dairy. For example, orange juice. In quick breads, for example, like when we were making the banana bread, remember, we used a bit of maziwa mala. Even in the red velvet cake, we used a bit of maziwa mala, and we used baking soda. Alkaline, acidic raising agent, react, carbon dioxide. That's baking soda. You want to be very careful when you're using baking soda, because a little too much in your baked goods and you end up with a greenish color and a bitter, soapy aftertaste in your baked goods. So please be sure to measure your baking soda exactly. When I talk about a level teaspoon, please ensure it's a level teaspoon, or just to be on the safe side, weigh it by weight, which is use a weighing scale instead of using a tablespoon or teaspoon. I'm going to talk about biological raising agents right now. The biological raising agent I'm going to talk about is yeast. Yeast has existed in many different forms, but the most widely available one, and which I advise everybody to have because it lasts longer and it's easier to store, is instant dry yeast. Please get instant dry yeast because it comes in powder form and it's fast acting. All you need to do is you don't need to, get it started in some water and sugar. You can actually put it in dry ingredients like this, and with the addition of water and a bit of sugar, it will start acting almost immediately. It's a bit slower than the two chemical raising agents that I've talked about. You have to give it time. When you're working with yeast, especially for bread, especially for croissant, especially for other things like bagels or donuts, you need to give it time. Remember that. Remember, it's a living organism and you need to feed it. What do I mean feed it? That's why you need to give it some sugar. In the baked good, the yeast feeds on the sugar, and the same thing, just like the two other chemicals, it produces carbon dioxide and gas, which causes your baked good to rise. But remember, with a biological raising agent like yeast, you need to give it time. How to store yeast? I recommend you buy yeast in small packets. There's some that comes in 10-gram packets, sachets. Please, that's what I do personally. I used to buy yeast in bulk, and with the regular opening and closing, and then you also scooping with with spoons that are not very dry, or it would not last very long. It would go off, and then I have to throw out an entire batch of yeast. Please, I recommend buy in small batches, already pre-packaged and completely sealed in small sachets of 10 grams, and that it keeps for longer. Some people prefer to store their yeast in the fridge or freezer. That extends its shelf life, but please buy in small quantities. I'm going to talk about another ingredient altogether, that is sugar or sweetening agents. Sugar to a baker comes in many forms. The most common form is this one. You'll find it, this is the type you use to sweeten your tea, to sweeten your coffee, and you'll find it in recipes being referred to as granulated sugar. It's basically this sugar. Sukari ya kawaida, the one you use to sweeten your tea, the one you use to sweeten your coffee, the one that you use to sweeten your uji, and it looks like this. There's another form of sugar called castor sugar. Castor sugar, someone actually asked this question in the last episode in the comments, and this is answering your question. Castor sugar is just granulated sugar that has been ground into a finer powder. Why do we use castor sugar? This is for recipes where you need the sugar to dissolve faster. You see, this has bigger grains. And for example, if you're making a meringue, this will take quite a while for it to dissolve in the egg whites. Or if you're making a quick bread, or remember when you made the Victoria sandwich, I keep referring to the Victoria sandwich quite a bit. These two will take quite a bit of time to cream with butter. So castor sugar is used in recipes that require for it to dissolve pretty fast because it's been ground into a finer powder. The other thing about castor sugar is that I also use it for buttercream, like Italian meringue buttercream, Swiss meringue buttercream, because you see I'm starting with a meringue. Meringue is egg white and sugar, and I need for this to dissolve quicker, and since it's ground to a fine powder, perfect to use. Another kind of sugar you'll find is icing sugar. Icing sugar is sugar that has been ground fine, and they've added a substance. Sometimes some of them have cornstarch added to stop it from, clumping into forming lumps or clumping together. But it's ground very fine. It literally looks like flour, like very white flour. It's used for making frostings like buttercream. Sometimes some cakes, some bakes actually use it. Some pastries like sweet puff pastry uses it because it dissolves faster. And remember, in pastry we don't want to overwork the dough, so we want something that is very fine and sort of can be sealed with the flour and will dissolve into the dough, into the baked good in record time. The thing about sugar, it's considered a wet ingredient in baking. Bakers, experienced bakers, or you find teachers, pastry chefs saying that sugar is hygroscopic, which means it helps baked goods retain their moisture and nice crumb texture, moist, and for the crumb texture to be, how do you call this, tender. Sugar, hygroscopic. Water, a wet ingredient. Hygroscopic are ingredients that sort of attract water, and it helps keep baked goods moist. It's actually considered a moist ingredient in baking. While we are on the subject of sugar, I can't fail to talk about this stuff, guys. This is honey. It comes from bees. It serves the same purpose as sugar. And when we're talking about honey, sugar, let's talk about other ingredients that you can use to actually play the same role as sugar in your baked goods. There's agave syrup, there is maple syrup, and those, like I said, about sugar is that it's a wet ingredient, and apart from giving the baked good a fine crumb texture and keeping it moist and longer shelf life, it also has the sweet flavor. So agave syrup, honey, glucose syrup, molasses, treacle, those are things that you use in the place of sugar and sweeteners. I talked about sugar and sweeteners. It's important to mention that it's not just about cane sugar. There's also sugar that comes from beets, and it can be used. And for some people, like for example, if you're on the ketogenic diet, there is a sugar alternative, and some of those play out such that they can be replaced one for one with sugar in baked goods. If you're baking for someone who's on the ketogenic diet, I forget the name of that thing, it's called what? But it's a sugar replacement. It looks exactly, tastes exactly like sugar. Also sweeteners for people like who are on the diabetic diet. There are sugar replacements like Splenda. I don't mention brands usually, but for lack of a better word, that's a sweetener that is actually, it's a crystal form of, it looks exactly like sugar and can be replaced one for one with sugar. So it's a wet ingredient, it has sweetness, gives the cake a fine crumb texture, fine tender crumb texture, so that when you're seeing the nice crumb. So that's about sweeteners, sugars, and ingredients in that range. I'm going to talk about fat. Notice I'm not calling it butter, calling it margarine, because in baking you use different fats. There are some recipes that call for butter. Most as a baker, you need to have lots of unsalted butter in your within reach, in your pantry, in your kitchen. But margarine is also a good alternative. But remember, when you're baking with margarine has salt added. So you want to remember to limit, do not add salt. If a recipe calls for unsalted butter and then a pinch of salt, if you're using margarine in that recipe, please remember not to add salt because the margarine has salt. Some recipes call for cooking oil, corn oil, any seed oil basically. Some recipes you can get away with using even olive oil, but olive oil has a very strong taste. You want to use corn oil, a neutral tasting oil in most baked goods, because remember that whatever oil you use, if it's strongly flavored, is going to affect the taste of your final baked product. Some recipes I have started loving, this is coconut oil, cold pressed coconut oil. It remains solid at room temperature. It's also an amazing fat to use in baking, but please remember, coconut oil has a strongish flavor, and it's going to be noticed in your final baked good, but it makes for excellent, especially if you're making coconut macaroons, not macarons, macaroons. If you're making a coconut or nutty flavored bake or cake, excellent to use. There are some people who are also lactose intolerant. Some of the people you're baking for are lactose intolerant. You want to use coconut oil because it's almost like butter. Melts in your mouth at room temperature, and it's very good to use. It's an excellent fat to use in baking. Let's talk things dairy. I already talked about butter. Butter makes things better. That's one of the first things I'll talk about under dairy. Things we need for baking that fall under dairy. Milk, fresh milk. I prefer, if I'm baking, to use full cream milk. Basically maziwa, like you see the ones, if you source your milk from a farmer, they've just milked it from the cow, fresh from the cow. That is full fat milk. I'll talk about cream. Cream comes from milk, basically, ideally, and I love to use that to make frostings, to flavor some baked goods, like for example, if I'm making a frosting, whipping cream. The higher the fat content, the better it is for whipping, and it can be used as a frosting just on its own. Cream cheese is another dairy that you need, not absolutely necessary, but like when you're making a red velvet cake and also carrot cake, you can make the frosting out of whipped cream folded into cream cheese. The most important dairy, which you notice I use quite a bit, is maziwa mala. Maziwa mala, for those of us who don't live in Kenya or in the East African region, is the Swahili word for natural yogurt or buttermilk, like it's called in America and in Europe, but here in Africa we call it maziwa mala. It's sort of like a fermented milk. It's like natural yogurt. You can advance the process by using Greek yogurt, but Greek yogurt is really thick. But that's the closest alternative to maziwa mala. Dairy, cheese. For example, if you're making cheese pies, if you're making what do you use? When we're making the waru pita, we use quite a bit of both mozzarella cheese. When you're baking pizza, you need mozzarella, you need cheddar. Dairy, that falls under dairy. There are alternatives for lactose intolerant people, and I don't have any here, but they're available there. Milk is available in from milk that makes from oats, from almonds, from almonds, from nuts, from plant material that can be used as well. There are also yogurts that are in the market right now, natural, that come from coconut milk or coconut cream. Those are alternatives for lactose intolerant consumers of your baked goods. Let me talk about eggs. I should have lumped them together with dairy, but the thing to note is that what do eggs do? Eggs perform like 2 or 3 functions in a baked good. One is emulsification. Remember, we used fat and we used other liquids like milk. We want the fat, the oil, and the liquid to stay in emulsification, stay emulsified. So eggs help do that. They are also a raising agent. If beaten like on the side, egg whites are beaten on the side and they are folded into a batter. They sort of cause it to rise and become spongy. Rising action. The other thing is that they are a binding agent. They are a binding agent in such that when you're making a dough and you're using like flour, all these other things, eggs sort of bring it back together. They act like a glue binding agent of bringing all the ingredients that you're putting in your dough together. An average egg is between 50 to 60 grams without the shell. It's important to note, especially because we said baking is an exact science, and sometimes you're in a hurry and you don't know how many eggs to use. Some recipes, like for meringues, you need to actually weigh your egg whites, or some recipes for like some cakes where you are using just the egg as the raising agent, like sponge, like the Genoa sponge, you might need to weigh your eggs, because where I come from, eggs come in different sizes, same tray but different sizes, as you can see, and you might want to weigh your egg content. Beat your eggs and then beat it and weigh it, so that you are getting an exact amount of egg liquid, basically. So let's talk about other things that you need for baking, basic additions. Salt. Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. Basically, what does salt do? Salt adds flavor. I avoid using very coarse salt. What do I mean? Large grains of salt in baked goods might not end up dissolving, and they end up being tasted in the final good. So you want to get a fine salt to use in baking, a finely ground salt. Salt adds flavor and sort of enhances other flavors. A pinch of salt in your baked good, even if it is a sweet baked good, will change and elevate the rest of the flavors. For example, if you've put vanilla, if you've put coffee, if you've put fruit, if you've put, salt just ties all those flavors together and sort of enhances how they taste. While I'm still on the subject of salt and flavor enhancers, I'll talk about spices. Spices, cinnamon tops the list of baker spices to have. But for myself, what I do, I get cinnamon and I get it in the form of the sticks. Then I grind it on demand as I need it. The other trick to ensuring spices are at their best when you use them for baking is to buy in small quantities as needed. Ginger, mixed spice. Mixed spice is actually used for sweet. It's good for both savory and sweet baked goods. Pepper, white or black, good to have, especially if you're doing savory bakes. You need that on hand. But like I said, if you can get it in the original form, like pepper, if you can get it in the peppercorns form, then you grind on demand. That's even better. If you're able to buy, if you can't get it in the original form and then grind on demand, then by all means buy small quantities as you need. Don't buy as opposed to buying it in bulk and then it stayed there, it's lost flavor by the time you're using it in, for example, you bought cinnamon, a big bag of ground cinnamon, and it's stuck there, and you are using it month 12, it's stuck in your quantity for 11 months, and you're using it, and you're like, oh, this is a pumpkin pie, pumpkin spice cake, and the people can't taste it because, I mean, as it's sitting there, it's been sitting there and losing flavor. Buy small quantities of spices as you need. One thing I'd like to mention about spices: experiment because I know a good friend of mine who has baked a very nice cake, a pineapple upside down cake, and thrown in some chili flakes. It was amazing. Chocolate cake, a friend of mine likes to add chili flakes to his chocolate cake, and it's amazing. While we are still talking on spices, let's talk herbs. Herbs like rosemary, mint. There's something about, for example, if you get a fruit tartlet, or you get mousse with a sprig of mint on the top, that changes the whole dynamic of, I mean, visually, and I mean, if it's a chocolate mousse, you'll want to even eat the mint. You want to eat the decoration, because chocolate mint is a thing. Chocolate mint flavor is a thing. So you want to plant those or get them dried, but please remember, dried herbs have a really intense flavor, so you want to use less of them. If you can get it fresh, like I do, you need a very small space to be able to grow your own fresh herbs. You need some of this for baking, and it depends on how convenient it is for you, whether to get the dried ones, again in small quantities as needed. Don't go crazy and buy like a kilo of mint, or a kilo of rosemary, or a kilo of oregano, because the longer it stays, the longer, you know, it sort of loses its flavor, especially if there's a lot of people, you know, opening, closing, it's not in it. Please store all your herbs and dried spices in an airtight container, and open the lid only when you need to, you know, when you're using them. Other basic add-ins or additionals that you need in your pantry as a baker is chocolate. I can't talk enough about chocolate, but please get good quality chocolate. You want to get good quality baking chocolate that has a higher content of cocoa mass and cocoa butter, which is basically chocolate is basically cocoa mass and cocoa butter. The more there is in chocolate, the better quality it is, and the more expensive it is. Get a good quality chocolate, not just for melting and baking and decorating your baked goods, but also for baking. There's a lot available on the Kenyan market as I speak. They range in price from the very low end, where it's baking chocolate is basically cocoa mass with cooking fat or cooking oil added instead of the cocoa butter. That's affordable, but it's not very good quality. It's very good for melting, and you can add it to baked goods. But if you're thinking of advancing your baking and talk about tempering chocolate, that's not good for that. So please, if you can get the best quality chocolate, it comes in 3 forms. There's milk chocolate, there is dark chocolate, and there is white chocolate. White chocolate has almost zero cocoa liquor, cocoa mass in it. It has milk solid added to it, and some dairy products like butter or milk powder added to it to make it white. Milk chocolate is, again, it's a mid-brown, and it's got some dairy, like milk powder or other dairy product added to it to give it the milky taste. Dark chocolate, which is my favorite to use in baking and for everything, is actually chocolate like in its purest form. It's really dark, and it's got a slightly bitter aftertaste, but it's good for making ganaches. It's good for, you know, when you add it to baked goods, excellent. But if you can have all three, even better. Notice the higher cocoa content and cocoa butter content in your chocolate, baking chocolate, the more expensive it is, but the better quality it is as well. Other basic add-ins are dried fruit. For fruit cake, for example, I like to use a mix of dried fruit, raisins, sultanas, cherries. Those are good to have in your pantry. For example, there's some scones we made and we added a bit of raisins to them. So please have some dried fruits. These ones last forever, basically. They're good to have in your pantry. These ones, I give you permission to actually buy them in bulk because they last you for ages. And especially you want to stock up, especially around Christmas season, because there's lots of fruit cakes being done that season, and there tends to be a shortage. I'm speaking from experience. In Kenya, you will look for dried fruit and you will not be able to find it. Most of the bake supply shops, it's run out because everybody is buying to bake for Christmas. So you want to have it in stock. You want to stock up a few months before Christmas in December. It tends to go out, very rare to find out of stock around other holidays like Eid, because they use a lot of dried fruit during that season as well, even Easter. So it's just a good ingredient to buy in bulk and have as a basic add-in to your baked goods in your pantry. Buy in bulk and have it in there. Fresh fruit is always, especially when it's in season, like blueberries, like strawberries, like raspberries, they make excellent muffins. Gooseberries, they make excellent additions. Please buy fruit in season. It can be used frozen. Blueberries, for example, most berries freeze extremely well, so when they're in season, buy in bulk, freeze, and put them in your baked goods. Like frozen blueberries can be used in muffins, they can be used in, or you can preserve them by making them into jams, which are excellent for bakes like Victoria Sandwich. I keep referring to that a lot because it's one of my favorite bakes. You can enjoy the fruit in your baked goods even when it's out of season. Jamming it, or making a jelly, or making a filling out of it, which we'll be learning later in the show, helps preserve the fruit so that you're able to enjoy it when it's even out of season. Fresh is best, but fresh and in season is best, but you can buy it and freeze it, make it into a jam, make it into a jelly, make it into a filling, which we'll be learning to do later, and you get to enjoy fruit as an add-in to your baked goods all year round. I've talked about chocolate, I've talked about fruit, dried and fresh. Allow me to refer to my notes. Nuts and seeds. Get small quantities of each as well, because some of them go rancid, especially nuts, or get them and roast them. That way they have a longer shelf life. Walnuts, peanuts, I especially love those groundnuts, peanuts, cashew nuts. They make excellent excellent almonds if you can get those. Those are among the, what do I call them, high-end nuts to get. They're excellent for snacking on if you run out of energy in between bakes. Oats. For some bakes, like you remember when we made the brown bread, we sprinkled some oats on the top, and that gave it a rustic, amazing look, like this amazing granary loaf look. All we did was add some oats on top of the bread while it was rising, and then we baked it and it looked amazing. As well as doing that, oats can be added into cookies and biscuits to give them a crunchier texture and a delicate short crumb texture. You can add those to, you can add oats to a cookie just to change the character, like it looks different. Yeah, basically back on chocolate. Please get your chocolate in the bar form. It's amazing to get chocolate chips as well, but I prefer to get the bar, the big bar, like it comes in bulk. It's literally a largish bar, and that way as a baker, not only does it save you money, because you notice chocolate chips for the same amount. For example, 500 grams of chocolate chips cost almost the same price as 1 kilo, 2.5 kilos bar of baking chocolate. The other thing about chocolate chips is that it does not. I like when I'm making like a chocolate chip cookie to have, like, you know, what are they called, pools of you know, moisture from the melted chocolate in there. Sometimes chocolate chips will not do that, they'll not melt, they'll just, you know, retain their solid nature. And for example, if you crumble a nice chocolate chip cookie and it's just melting, and you know, so I prefer to buy the bar of chocolate, baking chocolate, either in dark, actually get in all three, dark, milk and white, and then I chop it and add it to the baked goods as opposed to adding chocolate chips. But if you want chocolate chips, go ahead and get them. Other things you need, it's coconut, desiccated coconut, coconut that's been grated and dried, chia seeds. These are basic addings. They change the flavor and change the texture of your final baked goods. So it's good to have, just have them. Sprinkles, I cannot overemphasize. I get sprinkles in all shapes and colors, and those can change a basic decorated or frosted cake. It can elevate it from here to here. I am not big on brands. Whatever works for me is what, you know, I put out there. So sprinkles, you need lots of sprinkles to decorate. And sometimes there's this amazing bake which my daughter loves. It's called a fanfetti cake. It's basically a vanilla cake with dots of color in there, or we achieve that by, you know, throwing sprinkles in there. Colored sugars, this should come under sprinkles, guys. It's basically large grains of sugar that have been colored. You can achieve the same by getting sugar that has large crystals and tossing it in some with a little food color, either in gel form or powder form, to give. You sprinkle it on baked goods and it gives it a different color, pink. It's up to you. You can go as crazy as your imagination. Let's talk food colors. Food colors, and apart from the natural ones, like for example beetroot and the natural fruit colors like orange or passion fruit, it's important to have a few food colors. Get them as natural as you can. The best food colors to have in your pantry are gel colors. I cannot overemphasize this because they are multi-purpose. They are multi-purpose, guys. Gel colors are good with both wet ingredients. I'll take that again. Gel food colors are good with butters. You can add them to a cake batter or to a dough without changing the consistency of the dough. That's why I love them. For example, if I have whipped cream, I can add gel food color without making the whipped cream lose or lose its, you know, firmness. I can add them to, you know, meringues. I can add them to delicate cake doughs. I can even add it to macarons without changing the consistency of the butter or the baked good, which will affect the baked good. Vanilla, I cannot overemphasize the use of this. I go through vanilla like by the tons, guys. I buy vanilla essence. There's a very good quality one in Kenya. There are many brands that are producing excellent vanilla essence, but if you want to go all out, you can buy vanilla beans. It's the best way to, you know, it has the best taste. Vanilla beans or vanilla paste or vanilla extract. Those come from the Madagascar plant, and that's right up there in flavor. If you can get some of those, if you can get them, by all means go for them. But if you're just a baker who's just starting, please get vanilla essence. I get mine in bulk in clear. I get in both clear and the one that is slightly brown. Guys, we prefer, like I explained in the last video, why I like buying the clear vanilla essence, because I can use it for both frosting, icing, and for baking. If I'm baking a nice vanilla cake that is yellow, or like the Victoria sponge, or like the strawberry cake, and I put strawberries and I need the color to shine, the pink or red color of the berries to shine through the blueberry cake, a clear vanilla essence will not affect the color. The brown one will give it brownish color. So vanilla, you can get it in the original vanilla, the beans. You can get vanilla paste, you can get vanilla extract, or you can get vanilla essence, which is what is most commonly available in supermarkets and in most shops and bake supply shops. Oh, and then another question I need to answer before I go is always, all our bakes, someone asked me to mention the ingredients before I start the bake. One of the things I will talk about is that all our recipes, actually before you start, you can click the video, put stop, and then go to the description and copy paste the ingredients and their quantities. They are right in the description. All our videos, if you watch all our videos, all the videos on the Joe Mwembe Bakes channel, is that we have ingredients right in the description. And as always, we'll put them up. I know that is brief and it's up and then it goes, but all the ingredients are in the description. And like I say, before you start baking, please, you want to get your ingredients weighed out and ready, so that when you start baking, you are baking along, you're not stopping to look for salt. So please click in the description, it's right there, then get the ingredients, and then you can click for the video to continue playing, and then you can bake along with no hassles. The ingredients and their quantities are in the description, guys. I think that covers it. But if you think of if you see me use something on the channel that you didn't know what it was, or I've not talked about it right here, like I said, please ask the question in the comments and I will attempt to answer it in the next episode. We're here for you, so that you learn what we've learned through making many mistakes and you avoid those same mistakes. And until next time, I will see you on the Joe Mwembe Bakes channel, and let's get baking. Subscribe, share this content with people who are upcoming bakers, and bake along.